I'm Dan.
I'm Roger.
Welcome back to Tracerburnout. Today we're going to be talking to Mr. Bill Vurnakes, who is a Navy corpsman in Vietnam.
Just as a reminder, what this show is not. We are not pundits. We are not VA benefits experts. And we're not here to facilitate a gripe session about the military. This is just veteran stories in their own words. We hope you like it.
Hello, everyone. During the editing process, some technical issues were identified that affect the sound quality of both our first and second guest. The problem has been corrected moving on after our second guest. That I can assure you. Thank you for bearing with us. Enjoy. Hi, Bill. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dan. I certainly do appreciate the opportunity to be here.
All right, great. So I guess we start off just with a quick background. Do you have a family history of service?
Oh, yeah. Actually, it goes back to at least stateside. World War I have a great cousin who was actually he was a Greek immigrant. My grandfather and his brother brought him over here when he was 14 years old. He ended up to Raleigh in the late 1800s. He lived in Raleigh, went on active duty when the First World War broke out. He was actually severely wounded at the Battle of the Argonne Forest in France. We call them medevac back to the States now. They put them on a ship and send them back. Mm-hmm. I have subscribed to newspapers by ancestry. Best $14 a month I've ever spent because I was able to retrieve a lot of information. One of the things I found out about him was he was killed. He didn't die from the wounds that he sustained. He was killed as a passenger in an automobile accident in 1922. He was 30 years old. He was single. And he was, the newspaper article that I found about his funeral at Oakwood Cemetery in Raleigh. Oakwood is a historic cemetery, by the way. I don't know if you're familiar with it. In downtown Raleigh near the governor's mansion.
Yep.
That's where he's buried. The newspaper article said that there were over 1,000 people at the cemetery, which I found absolutely astounding. Of course, I sent it to the cemetery manager. I know her personally. I called her and told her about it. She wanted me to scan it and send it to her, which I did. And she said it was. I don't think they've ever had anything that with that many people.
Wow.
And that was in 1922.
Wow.
My mother had three brothers. Two were in the Army. One was in England. Actually, he was in D-Day. Another one was, and I did the math, how when he was born, and when the photograph was taken that I have of him. Actually, I have all three of her brothers in uniform. He was probably I'm guessing 22, 23, 24 years old, first sergeant.
Yeah.
In the Second World War.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the same way with like in Vietnam, but all you had to do was show up with your ID card and you got promoted. No, you did. If you were critical MOS like I was. But I'll get to that later on. But anyway, two were in the Army, and one joined the Marine Corps when he was 17 years old. He never got deployed because he didn't turn 17 until right at the tail end of the war. So, they were. I think VJ Day had already occurred, and
So they had already started the drawdown.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Then I had an uncle by marriage. Two of them actually. One was at the tail end of the Second World War, and he also served in Korea. And another one was in the Marine Corps during the tail end of the Second World War, and then occupation forces in the Army in Europe. And then a younger cousin that I told you prior to the broadcast. That is retired first sergeant. He's a first class guy.
So
let me just put it this way: if I had a son, I would want one like him. I don't have any kids, by the way, by choice.
So you have a pretty rich family history of service. Did that have anything to do, or did that impact your decision?
Oh yeah,
at all?
Yeah. I mean, when I came along, and when I came along, we had the draft. It was conscript military.
Mm-hmm.
If you were in college, you were deferred as long as you kept the seat average. If you were married, you could get a deferment. And I had gone to college 3 years after high school graduation. I call myself when I came back, I'll get back to that. Anyway, the circumstances were that I was not doing well academically.
Mm-hmm.
And quite honestly, I never have. I flunked the 11th grade. I graduated when I was like 19, not 18 years old. I had a 725 SAT. At the time that I took the SAT, the max score was 1,600, and I didn't even get to the halfway mark. It was divided into two sections. It was math and verbal.
Yeah.
And I quit school I went to a junior college 2 years, got my grades way up, transferred to the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. At the end of my junior year, I went ahead and dropped out. I was going to flunk out anyway. I did it that way deliberately so that my transcript would read withdrew passing, making it I knew I was going back,
Mm-hmm.
making it easier to get back in.
Right.
So I enlisted in 1966. I didn't tell my father until after I signed the contract, and then came home and told him I did it. My father was a Greek immigrant too, by the way. I'm first generation in this country. And by the way, I speak the language. I'm pretty fluent. So anyway, I quit and enlisted. I went down to the Navy recruiter here in Fayetteville and walked into the recruiter's office. I went to see all of them. I remember the Navy recruiter in particular. Of course, he asked me, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I didn't know. And typical, he was a chief petty officer. He's sitting at his desk, swivel chair that rolls. So he rolls back in the chair, swivels around, pulls this big book out, and typical, hands it to me, and he says, "Sit down over there and find something." It's like when you went to boot camp, put down your religious preference. If you don't have one, put one down.
Yeah. In real time.
Right. So anyway, I was flipping through the job descriptions, and one in particular, I noticed that someone was either taking the blood pressure or drawing some lab work, and I read the job description, flipped through several more, and I came back to it, and I picked it up, picked the book up, walked over to his desk, and I said, I think I'd want to do this I couldn't even say it right. I think I'd want to be a hospital corpsman.
The P is silent.
You got it. You got it. That's right. It turned out to be several things. Flunking out and picking that MOS were two of the best decisions of my life. I didn't know it at the time, but certainly it was pretty obvious later on. From there, I went to, of course, I went to boot camp and hospital corps school at Great Lakes, Illinois, and then from there I went to Camp Lejeune, to field med school. We jokingly say that we went to medical school, hospital corps school,
Right.
4 months. We got our medical degree in four months.
That's right.
And then we did our residency in 6 weeks at Camp Lejeune.
That's right.
And then they called you doc. Well, you know that. I mean, all the Army medics and the Air Force medics and the Navy Corpsman are all docs.
Every medic is doc. Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right. You can cure everything. But anyway, I went to from Camp Lejeune Field Med School. I went to Naval Hospital at Portsmouth, Virginia for they told us we'd go to a hospital for about 6 months and then we'd be deployed to Vietnam. I ended up at Portsmouth for 18 months instead of the expected 6 months. And I got to see, oh Lord, I was there I got there June of 67, and I was there all of 68. A very, very tumultuous year in 68. You guys are way, you weren't even on the planet then, probably, or little kids. The North Koreans boarded the, oh gosh, golly, it's on the tip of my tongue, but a reconnaissance ship of ours. Commander Booker was the CO.
The Pueblo incident? So,
Pueblo.
Yeah,
exactly. And
incident.
right. The Martin Luther King assassination, Robert Kennedy assassination, the Russians invaded Czechoslovakia. These aren't the order, this isn't the order. The Russians invaded Czechoslovakia. There were 3 subs lost. We lost one, the French lost one, and the Russians lost one that year.
So you're saying that 1968 was a tough year geopolitically?
Oh yeah, boy. That's when what's going on right now is reminiscent of
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, end of the year, I went to Vietnam, and
well, before we move on to Vietnam, let me ask you. So you went to basic training,
correct,
and then to Camp Lejeune, and then to Portsmouth.
Basic training, hospital corps school.
Right.
Camp Lejeune, and then to Portsmouth.
Right. Now, at that point, because you had already you graduated high school late.
Right.
You'd been in college for a few years.
3 years, right.
Had you ever in your life been away from home like that before?
No. I was, I pretty much. Actually, I was born in Raleigh. We moved here when I was 7 or 8 years old. 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
And I graduated from high school on a Friday, and Sunday I was gone. I went to work in Raleigh for my aunt. She was an interior decorator in Raleigh.
But you'd never been.
No.
When you took off for basic training, that was like the furthest away from home you'd ever been, and especially for a duration like that.
First time I'd ever been in an airplane.
And for the uninitiated, please explain what a corpsman is exactly. They've probably insinuated at this point that it's medical in nature, but please.
Correct. Yeah. Well, the name medic and hospital corpsman is used synonymously in all branches of the service. In fact, they all train at the same place now at San Antonio.
That's right.
Individual schools.
That's right.
Yep.
And essentially, what you are is you're pretty much an LPN.
A licensed practitioner or nurse.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I'll get to that later on.
Okay.
The advantage I had when I went back to get an undergraduate degree in nursing, so I could get into a nurse anesthesia program because of having been a corpsman, and I knew a lot as far as one-on-one nursing care, medications, dressing changes. I mean, you could do a number of things.
Yeah.
We
So
did
a first responder in uniform.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. And from there, from Portsmouth, I went to Vietnam. Ended up with a grunt battalion.
Yeah. And that was, I mean, you knew ahead of time that was ultimately going to be the destination. Like throughout training and everything. Just
I mean, just the fact that we went from hospital corps school to Camp Lejeune Field Med School, we already had a subspecialty.
Yeah. Was there, knowing that Vietnam was the ultimate destination and that's where you were headed, was there a sort of feeling of trepidation as it got closer and closer and closer?
Oh yeah, I mean every time every time orders came out, you were always checked.
Yeah,
I was amazed that I lasted 18 months at Portsmouth.
Yeah. What was the the general mood, I guess, because I mean, you were obviously with other corpsmen, other Navy personnel, waiting for those orders.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, was there? I guess what was the general mood like, knowing that it was coming?
Or
maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow,
Or
but
to use
eventually.
a good Greek reference, the sword of Damocles.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right. A good analogy.
Because everybody knew that, like all your peers knew that was the destination that they were going to.
That's exactly
just a matter of time.
Correct.
I don't imagine that everybody handled it well.
No, they didn't. In fact, we had one guy that he got orders to Vietnam, and months later we had him back on the ward that he and I were working on before he was sent over. He came back as a patient, wounded. Incidentally, the ward that I worked on was a orthopedic ward, and they were all Vietnam returnees. And these guys were, oh boy, they were missing one extremity, sometimes two, and sometimes three. Long-term patients. You really got attached to them.
Yeah.
And obviously they depended on you an awful lot too.
Yeah.
One of the things, one of the incidents I failed to mention in 1968 was when the Liberty, USS Liberty was shot up in the Mediterranean. It was an electronic dropping ship, and the Israelis shot it up. It was misidentified.
Yep.
So we had casualties off of the Liberty, off the forestall. Incidentally, the forestall happened about that time. I saw the forestall come down the Elizabeth River with the aft end of the flight deck, just a big hole blown in the flight deck, and it wiped out the medical department because their berthing space was below the flight deck, and when the explosion occurred, a secondary explosion, by the way, the explosion and the subsequent fires, went below several decks and killed a number of them, a number of corpsmen.
Yeah.
So you were seeing real combat casualties before you even left to go to Vietnam.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I don't imagine that helped reassure you.
And every one of them, to the person, at least this is what I recall in 2024. I remember every one of them telling me, you just don't do anything stupid, and you just be extremely, extremely careful. You're not going to accomplish a damn thing running around in a firefight when they're looking for you. They're looking for the guy with the bag.
Yeah.
Your
aid bag.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the person that carried a 45. Incidentally, I didn't carry a 45. When we got to the armory, when we checked in at the armory in headquarters, I was automatically, the guy the young man at the armory automatically slaps a 45 on the counter when he saw me that I was born. I said, no, I want an M16. I want to look like everybody else. I damn sure didn't want to be the radioman. I would have, I think I would have taken that antenna off that radio, and I wouldn't screw the thing on until I really needed it.
So when you got to Vietnam, it was what year?
1968, the end of 68, December 68.
Okay.
And I stayed until the end of August of 69. That's because Nixon had come into office and was starting to draw down.
Yeah,
that's right.
The 26 Marines were the first ones in years before I came along.
Yep.
The first, some of the first Marines in, so they were the first ones out. But I really didn't get too far. I mean, they just told us to pack up and don't unpack when you get there, which you're going to Okinawa, and threw us in the back of a C-130, and we were since we got there, we were farmed out. I remember this too. I remember the early morning when we got to Okinawa. I'm going to come back to Vietnam in just a second. But when we got to Okinawa, speaking of farmed out, I thought I was safe because I was landed in Okinawa. We got there about barracks right here behind the building. Just throw the mattress down, be back in here in a couple of hours, so 0700. So we did. 0700, we showed back up, wait for our assignments. I thought I was going to a dispensary or something like that. We got farmed out to the MPs to go out into the vills or a ville.
Yeah.
Because of the race riots. The race riots. And I thought,
Well,
son of a gun.
1969. That's what's going on back home too.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
We had some incidents in Vietnam too when we went to. Actually, we were standing perimeter at a fire base one time, and there was actually shooting started. Fortunately, nobody got hurt. And
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget
Yeah.
how tumultuous it was.
it was.
And that you know that that anger,
Right.
that frustration with everything
Right.
permeated every single aspect of daily life.
Right.
I mean, it was everywhere.
No question about it. No
Yeah.
question about it. Let me get back to Vietnam. It was we were a battalion landing team, float battalion. We spent some time on. We had 3 or 4 ships. One I ended up on was a helicopter carrier. It was about a 600-foot flight deck, and what we would do, we were floating up and down the coast off of Icor, the northern part of the country. And we were reinforcement battalion. And if anyone stepped into a hornet's nest, we were flown in. The old CH-46 is Shaky Jake. Good God Almighty. I remember too, when you got on board, you didn't have your flak jacket on in your pack. You had it in straddle between your legs, and they gave you this little bottle with a it looked like a regulator on a or a small regulator on a scuba tank, and we called it the last chance. So it's funny now, but it wasn't so funny.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, literally, you guys know this. You've been on active duty before. What's going to happen when a helicopter hits the water? Where is it heaviest? On top. It's going to automatically invert. Exactly right. And this thing gave you about 3 minutes of oxygen to get out of the aircraft. So, fortunately, we never had to use it. But anyway, what we would do, we would go. They'd fly us in to reinforce or to reinforce an existing battalion or company, or we'd start our own operation. And we were they'd fly us back out to the ship for 24, 36 hours, shower, hot meal, clean clothes, and back out again.
About how was that like regularly scheduled, or was it just we've got the opportunity right now, so let's take it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly right. Some of the operations were a couple of the operations they had.
About how frequently was that sort of refit?
Oh gosh, Dan.
I mean,
it was. I remember the longest I can recall staying out and in the same clothes and not taking a shower was about 20 or 21 days.
Yeah. Well, if everybody stinks, then you can't really smell your own
It's
smoke.
true. It does kind of drown it out. It's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Not that makes it better, but
I can
yeah.
tell you when. Oh boy. Fortunately, at least the company I was with, we never, thank God, we never ran into a company-size L-shaped ambush of MVA.
Yeah.
Not VC. VC were hit and run.
Of course.
The regulars were as well equipped as we were.
Yep.
They had mortars, they had artillery. The one thing they didn't have is air power. We had air supremacy. Not superiority, but supremacy. Every damn thing that they got off the ground never came back and landed.
Right.
Of theirs. But it was when the firefight started. very, very chaotic. You've seen war movies, well, you guys have been in them. You know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't mean you've been in the movies, but you've been in situations where nothing goes according to plan. It's chaotic. You want to know why everybody's yelling? That's because your ears are ringing from the weapons going off on each side of you. And you have to yell for anybody to hear you. And the last thing you just dreaded to hear was corpsman up. Boy, oh boy. That's when your rectal sphincter went from its anatomical position to here. And it was choking you to death.
Yeah.
And you could you couldn't find a back road Baptist or a Hindu or a Jew or I'm sorry, I'm back up a little bit. You found back road Baptists, the Hindus and Jews and Buddhists for Jesus when the shooting started.
No atheists in foxholes.
No atheists in a foxhole.
Absolutely, that's the truth.
Yeah.
Well, we've all heard that.
Well, I mean, we've all heard it because it is true.
I don't mean that to be facetious, but it is true.
Yeah.
And you could find, oh boy, if you were a crucifix and a pocket Bible salesman, you could have made a killing when the shooting started. Again, it's I kind of halfway chuckle now, but ooh,
well, it tends to be a bit more humorous in the dark humor that a lot of military and other specific jobs have. Yeah. But it's always in retrospect. It's never funny at the time.
And nobody spoke the King's English when the shooting started. we have a deployed vocabulary.
Yes.
And a safe side vocabulary.
Yes. And when things go wrong, the deployed vocabulary takes over 100% of your brain. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got it down. Your vocabulary is about 150 words.
I think that's probably a good guesstimation. Well, actually, 150 might be a bit much.
Fair.
About how long had you been in country before you were first in an engagement?
I got there in December and January.
Yeah. So 30 days or less.
Probably more like 6 weeks. Okay. Because we got there towards about mid-December, and the holidays coming up, they weren't doing too much. They were sitting in the rear with gear.
Yeah.
In other words, they weren't rotating the elements out yet.
Yeah.
And it was roughly that, about 6 weeks, somewhere around there.
Tell us about your first corpsman up. What is going through your mind? What are you feeling?
You thought you were going to die. Yeah, you thought you saw your last sunrise. I remember thinking that. I was a senior corpsman. There were 8 corpsmen. There were 9 of us. A senior corpsman and 8 others. I was a senior corpsman, but as a senior corpsman, I was expected to be with every casualty. In other words, if we were walking in a sweeping area in 3 columns, and we were spaced out obviously, so we weren't clustered. I remember being at the end of one column, the middle column. That was the area that we had already predetermined among ourselves who was going to cover what, and then. Further up, we were going through some elephant grass. We were going after a helicopter. We were getting resupplied one night, and right before dark, and it was a CH-46. And they came out in 2s, and they had 2 Huey gunships flying shotgun. They're 180 degrees apart. You know that.
Yep.
And 46 came in with a cargo net slung under it. As soon as they were starting to at least get low enough to drop the net, or where they could release the net without splattering everything everywhere. And the shooting started. fortunately, they were able to, they dropped the net, everything, the ammo boxes, the food, everything. He was too high to, and I understand, I mean, they had to do what they had to do. They had to get the weight off the aircraft and get out of there.
Yep.
And you saw a trail of smoke, and keep in mind it was getting dark, and I could just see the trailing smoke, probably had something in hydraulics. And it turns out they sat down several miles away, and there was the Hueys were with them, and the Hueys got the crew members. I guess they were far enough away and got to at least some place where they could pick them up. We went after the aircraft. We started. We had just dug in. I remember that. I had my E-tool, and I dug my little concave area.
Your fighting position.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wasn't gonna go up to neck deep, but it was just low enough to get me below.
Yeah.
Get me low enough that you hope that
Yeah.
you
If nothing else, it meant you feel a little safer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your false sense
And
of
that's
security.
something.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's better than nothing.
But anyway, we started at we saddled up, and we were going to go after the aircraft. We were surrounded. It turns out we were. So they call in an airstrike. It was pitch black, and these young guys, these young Marines, God bless them, what they did was they dug a hole around the perimeter and put a strobe light in it to mark
to mark the perimeter up.
Correct.
Yeah.
Then we had two F4s.
Phantoms coming in.
Right. It was napalm. It was so close. I don't know how they kept from dropping one on us. They had to be what?
Could feel the heat.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You bet. But that sure put a stop to us being stranded. So we finally got out, and we were going through elephant grass. It was as tall as the three of us, and we were in 3 columns, and getting back to as a senior morning, being expected to be with everybody. We were in 3 columns. I was in the middle column at the end, and all of a sudden the shooting started. It wasn't. It was a quick burst. It was probably, I'm guessing, 25, 30 rounds, something like that. As it turns out, the elephant grass was so high, and we were separated. Somebody either in a flanking column shot at the point man or one behind him in the middle column. And boy, as luck would have it, it was through gunshot wounds of the forearm. I've never seen anything like it in my life, but it went between the radius and the ulna.
Between them,
And it did shatter it. And
Man.
It didn't hit a vessel. I don't know about the nerve. We weren't, that wasn't our concern. Is saving the extremity was the main thing. So that we had about 3 or 4 casualties out of that, and I remember having to drop my even though we had other corpsmen up there, but I remember having to scurry up to I don't know how far it was, probably 150, I don't know, maybe 200 feet, between 250 and 300, somewhere around there.
Probably felt like an eternity.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. And you didn't know what the hell you were going to find. Then you were abandoning your. What if something happened at the other end now?
Yeah.
After I was up there, but see, you already had the corpsmen in the 2 flanking columns to take care of that. That was it was very stressful having to do that. I remember we had an ambulatory patient. It was being medevaced. Another one, I think, 46, and two Hueys came in. And we were always taught in field med school that if somebody was not critical, in other words, if they could walk on their own and there was no uncontrolled bleeding, you don't go to the LZ with them. And I remember telling one of my fellow corpsman that was with me, I told him, don't go down there. Don't do it. He did. The proverbial crapola hit the fan.
Yep.
I mean, they see a clay pigeon coming in.
Yeah.
You know that. And the Hueys were just working the area. The gunships were as best they could. The corpsman I told not to go down there with the ambulatory patient got shot. It was in one shoulder and out the entrance and exit wound, and it severed his spine. And he was a quadriplegic. I ran down to the LZ. I remember it was an AK-47. I remember finding the slug probably that far from him, laid on the ground when I got to him. Now we had another problem. Now we had an air crew of 46 on the ground, longer than anticipated, a firefight, a cluster now at the LZ, me and a couple of other corpsmen to help take care of the one who just got wounded,
Yep.
hand him off to the medevac corpsman. And it just, that's another time I thought I was going to die.
From bad to worse.
Right.
Yeah. You got multiple medical personnel gathered together in one central location where everything is going wrong.
You don't.
And that is exactly what you do not want.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Goodness gracious.
if 15 of you in the family are flying degrees, don't get on the same plane. You go on different planes.
Yeah.
So another time we were setting in and a sniper shot one of our Marines. It was a through and through gunshot wound to the head, and me and actually the company commander were close by. Needless to say, we hit the deck and we went out after him, or crawled out to him, and another one of the corpsmen. And there's no question he was seizing just from the gunshot wound to the head. This guy was gone. One of the other corpsmen that I was with wanted to try to resuscitate him, so he sits up and we're in a firefight. You can't do anything for him.
Yeah.
And I just grabbed him and
So is the senior corpsman, is it ultimately your decision, matters of triage?
well, yeah, for the most part, but you also, I mean, you've got some people that are as well trained as you are.
Okay.
And oftentimes it was a no-brainer. But this was, God bless him, I think it was an emotional decision.
Yeah.
He's wounded, I've got to save him. That kind of mindset. Now keep in mind, he was a lot younger than me. He probably didn't work on the ward with all these Vietnam returnees like I did for as long a period as I did, and hearing him say, "Don't do anything stupid. Don't do anything stupid." That's all I heard. I heard that in my head a lot of times.
Do you think your time there on the ward, especially since you had such a prolonged time there,
Right.
do you think that helped you?
Yeah.
I mean, not just the constant, reminder, don't do anything stupid, don't do anything stupid, but a lot of times with combat casualties, it's the visual shock of what you're seeing. But you had seen all these variety of casualties.
The long-term after effects.
Yeah. Do you think that helped you?
You bet.
Mentally.
Yeah.
Prepare.
Yeah.
And emotionally.
There was, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't John Wayne. And I remember the the CO wanted another senior corpsman, and they sent somebody out there, and I told him before he went, I can tell you right now what's going to happen. You cannot do it. He didn't listen.
The new corpsman?
Right. I carried this for a long, long time, and I still do. He got killed right away. I replaced him. He got wounded right away, but they were up running around in a firefight. Again, I told them, you have to, you have to play smart. And what good is it going to, are you going to do these guys that are depending on you if you're wounded and medevaced or killed? The second replacement was wounded. They put him on a medevac helicopter. They were lifting off the LZ. A round came through the bottom and it killed him on the aircraft. He got wounded, medevac, and killed with a freak round through the fuselage. The next one, number 3, got wounded right away. For the longest time, you've heard of survivor's guilt, of course.
Of course.
Yeah. I carried that for over 3 decades. And I'll get to that too, what happened that made a difference.
Seeing,
Anyway.
because of all the turnover, especially with the corpsman,
Right.
how much time, I mean, if any at all, did you try to put into, teaching more advanced? I mean, because obviously the Marines you were with got some very, very, very rudimentary medical training.
Right.
How much were you able to maybe increase that knowledge because of the high turnover in corpsmen?
I really couldn't do too much. I mean, we were moving so much. In other words, we didn't take a what do they call it? We didn't take an education day.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And do let's talk about this case study. Nothing like that. You just didn't. No way you could do that. Now, I don't know if you guys did this or not, but we gave all the Marines battle dressings to put. Everybody, you've seen movies.
Oh yeah.
Vietnam
Yeah.
Era, where a tire tube, the inner tube, they cut it, made a big rubber band, and had mosquito repellent on one side and a battle dressing on the other.
Not exactly that, but we had something similar. Yes.
Yeah. But the point is that you didn't have to carry 300 battle dressings with you. You already had at least one if you could get to the casualty.
Yeah. What we have now is we call it an IFAC for short, which is an individual first aid kit.
Oh.
Yeah.
And so you carry it on your person, and that's for you. That's not for your
So
buddy.
if you get wounded, your IFAC gets used on you. So
Really?
And so the docs aren't running around. I mean, they've got enough stuff they're carrying as it is.
But the very basic stuff like a tournament, things
Some
things like
quick
that.
clots.
And the Marines did know pressure points.
Yep.
Yeah.
How to if you wanted a hand,
Check for a pulse and
press the
Yep.
radial
Yeah.
artery or the femoral artery right here in the groin if it was a lower extremity.
Yeah, no, obviously it's it's some very rudimentary, some very basic things like that are taught in basic and advanced training. But I didn't know if maybe you were able to pass on maybe something slightly more advanced, to not just to ease the burden on you, but then also make things easier for them.
Right.
But it doesn't sound like you had a whole lot of time for that.
No. Anyway, it was finally over. I went to Okinawa, like I said, for 3 months, and I came back. Never will forget my NCOIC Chief Andy Curvin.
This is when you got back stateside.
Well, actually, when I was in Okinawa,
Okay.
he tried to talk me into to staying, and I told him, I said, no, sir, I need to. I need to get back in school.
Yeah.
And he was a class act. He was a widower, and he married a widow, and then they had a yours, mine, and ours, and ended up between them they had like 7 or 8 kids. But he was a good man. I've tried to find him several times, and I never could. He's probably, just because of my age and his age, he was several years older than me. He's probably deceased by now. If he's living, he's got to be in his 90s. But he was a good man. He was a West Coast sailor. But anyway, I came back and I went back to school. I think a big mistake they made with us, at least with me, they didn't happen to everybody. I came back stateside at Long Beach, California, got separated from active duty, and I was gone instead of sending me to a duty station.
How rapid? I mean, like as soon as you got back, how long was it before you were discharged?
I was out. If it was a weekday, I was out in 72 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fast.
Yeah, what they did is they really moved you to reserve status.
Yeah.
Because it was a 6-year commitment. I don't know if it still is or not.
No, it's for the Army it's 8.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
for
right.
for the inactive reserves. Yeah.
The IRR, the inactive reserve, ready reserve. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a 6-year total commitment in my day. I went back to school. I came back and got out in December of '69, and went back to school. We were on the court. I went back to East Carolina. The president of East Carolina was a retired, or I don't know if he was retired or not. He was a Marine. I don't know if he was career or not. Dr. Jenkins was his name.
East Carolina University.
Well, I'll have you know that I also am an alumnus of the Harvard of Eastern North Carolina, also known as East Carolina University.
Really?
I am indeed. I won't tell you what year I graduated, but
Well, anyway, I went back and finished a BS in business that I had started. I can tell you that I was very angry with the anti-war demonstrations that I saw on campus. Kent State happened right after I went back to school.
Yep.
And when I left California coming back to the States, I couldn't fly back in my uniform. I flew back home in civilian clothes because you didn't want to be a target.
Right.
Now, was that a personal choice or was that advised to you?
Advised, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and you've heard the stories before. You know, we were spat upon and baby killers, and anyway, we were not accepted as having served the country in an honorable way. So I was fortunate enough to, right after I went back to school, I was in the student union. This was when the student union was behind Wright Auditorium, by the way.
Oh yeah.
And there was a cute little strawberry blonde in there. I was 26 and had just gotten out. And I just happened to start talking to her. As it turns out, she was about 22 or 23 years old, and she was back getting a master's in counseling. If I wasn't married, I'd have her picture up beside the one of Christ in the house. For saving my life.
She saved your life.
Right. Yeah. I remember years later, she married just a first class guy. And actually she and her husband came to my wedding. And I remember her telling her kids, I dated Bill when I was back getting a master's in counseling. I said, that's not so. custody for 3 years. She really did, and I jokingly tell her, or I have jokingly jokingly said to her that I think she needed a case study to get her master's in
A specimen.
And she chose you.
Right. And I didn't know it at the time.
So, what was it that this cute little strawberry blonde counselor going for her master's degree, what was it that, you know, she did like to help your transition? Was it just somebody to talk to? Was it somebody to just lend a more compassionate ear? Somebody that you could vent to? I mean, what was it?
All of it, what you just said. She just did it all. She listened. She could have walked any time, but she didn't.
Yeah.
She ended up the best friend, or one of the best friends I've ever had, even to this day. So, anyway, I went back and got a BS in business, and after I got out of the Navy, and I wanted to become a nurse anesthetist, but I needed a nursing degree as a prerequisite to get that. Incidentally, when I first went back to school, I got a job working in the emergency room at Pitt Hospital. This was the old Pitt Hospital, not the one that's there now. And I worked 3 to 11, 3 in the afternoon to 11 at night. I went to school during the day. And generally I'd get out of class around 2. I'd go from 8 to 2, and then I'd go work. I did it four nights a week. And that's between that and the GI Bill, that's how I got through school. My roommate, this was another lucky find too. I was again a student union one day, ran into this guy. He was just back in school too, same circumstance. 3 years, dropped out in Vietnam. He was a maintenance battalion, and they pretty much did everything. He was an E5 like me, and he was on a couple of helicopters that went down. He was a gunner. You know, they did mail runs, whatever needed to be done is what they did. They had a rotation for the gunner on the slick. And so anyway, I went back out a nursing degree. Well, the dean of the school of nursing, because I had been in Vietnam, because I had been a corpsman, and she knew, maybe she took my word for it. You know, the patient care that I had done, one-on-one patient care that I had done as a corpsman. She let me take the final exam for sophomore year nursing, the final exam for medical surgical course. And the grade I got on that was going to be the grade I got for every course the first and second year.
So testing out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I made a B minus on it. And
B's get degrees.
But I took it cold. I mean, I knew that much.
Yeah.
And I say I knew that much from experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, real world experience goes a long way that things in the classroom can't teach you.
Right. So I ended up getting a BS in nursing, and then I was 28 when I finished the BS in nursing. I did take some physics and chemistry and biology for a couple of years, and then the nursing degree, because I had to have that too for the nursing degree. I didn't have it for business. And graduated from school of nursing at 32. I got into a nurse anesthesia program up in Richmond Medical College of Virginia. Started that when I was 32. Finished up the first semester, second semester started. This was in 1976. Second semester started at the beginning of 77. I got hospitalized and had a ruptured appendix, misdiagnosed, ended up in the hospital 6 weeks.
Okay,
And,
hold on. How were you misdiagnosed when you had a ruptured appendix? I mean, with
Oh,
your
yeah,
with your medical training and everything, I'm sure that you knew what it was.
I had a, I couldn't, I had a darn good idea.
So how did the, highly paid medical professional who was treating you not know what it was? And what did they think it was?
What's the next question?
No, come on, seriously. What did they think it was?
They kept telling me I had pancreatitis, and I kept saying I don't drink that much, which I don't. And there's no history of blunt trauma where I got hit down here in the lower left quadrant. I don't understand it. Well, anyway, the short version is that too many people had too many opinions. It was a big medical training.
Too many cooks in the kitchen?
That's it. There was too many opinions. Good intentions. There's no question about that. And I ended up, having to drop out. I went home. I came back here for I don't know, a month or so, and then I went back to work in Greenville, and went back to work in Greenville for about a year or two, and then I went back on active duty. That's because I wanted to go back to a nurse anesthesia program, and I had already borrowed a lot of money and when I went to in 1976 to go to school in Richmond, the anesthesia program in Richmond. So the military was again my ticket,
right?
And they let me back in at 35 years and 9 months old.
Yeah. So I mean, you had almost a decade break in service.
9 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I don't imagine that was very commonplace.
No.
Yeah. Now, before we keep moving on, let me ask you this. Not just going to East Carolina for the medical stuff, but then also going on to the school in Richmond.
Right.
How common, I guess, not how common, but what was the student population like as far as veterans, especially medical personnel veterans, continuing on the medical path? Were there a bunch of other Navy corpsmen or medics or anything like that?
At least not with me. They weren't in my class. No. There was. I'll tell you about some of the guys I served with when I'm eventually leading up to that.
Yeah.
But a number of us that one ended up as a PA, one a nurse administrator. There were 4 of us. No. Maybe 5. There were 2 respiratory therapists and me as a nurse anesthetist that we all served together.
Oh.
That's where we ended up.
Okay. Well, so you went back in the Navy because you had student loans and stuff to pay off.
Correct. Yeah. And so that was. But if I went back on active duty, then that was quite a bit of that was forgiven because I was serving. Even though it was in the military, I was serving as a nurse.
Yeah.
And. You couldn't you couldn't apply for a nurse anesthesia program as soon as you went back on active duty. You had to
work your way up to it.
Exactly, exactly right. So I tried to get into the Navy program a couple of times during the course of about the 10 years. I didn't get in, and so I was. You always have to have a plan B.
Yeah.
You know that. I mean, well, all of us that have been in for any length of time. It's just like going over my wife will tell you this, when we're on the 2-lane road and we're going over a hill, I'm already looking for a place to ditch the car in case somebody comes the other way in my lane. It's true. True story.
Got to have an exfil plan at all times.
That's it. And, so anyway, let's see, that was in 1979 when I went back then. The Berlin Wall came down around 89.
89, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a service-wide rift, all 4 branches, and I was I was one of the ones that got rifted. I went active reserves right away and applied for a civilian program across the river. I was stationed at Naval Hospital in Portsmouth. I applied for a civilian program at Norfolk General Hospital. I knew the program director was a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. I was 45 years old. So keep in mind, I went back on active duty 35 years, 9 months old. 10 years later, 45 years old. The wall comes down. Reduction in force. I know that was all agreed to with the Soviets when Bush Sr. was president.
After Desert Storm.
Right.
Yep.
And so I made an appointment to go see the program director. And knowing that he was a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, I went over in my uniform. And I remember telling him, Wickheiser was his name. He gave me one of the biggest breaks in my life. He's deceased now too. God bless him. I remember telling him, I said, sir, I wanted to come by and see you to see if I was wasting my time or your time even applying for school. And I told him the circumstances and having been in a previous program and having taken a medical drop and I said, I remember saying this too. I said, if you're looking for a 3.4 undergraduate GPA, I said, sir, we can stop right here because I don't have it. I've got about a 2.7. I always describe myself as an overachieving C student, by the way.
C's get degrees.
That's it. I'll tell you something about that too. What happened in class. So he said, we talked, and at the end of 30 minutes, he told me to go ahead and apply. And I said, I have my RIF letter. I can either go ahead and get out at the end of February of this was in 88, the end of February of 89, or I can take a 4-year extension with no guarantee of promotion. I was an 03 at the time. And I submitted I said, I really have to notify him of my intent. He understood all this. Notify him of my intent, whether to take the 4-year extension or just get out. And I said, would you consider walking the application through the admissions committee, even though you aren't planning on meeting for several months? He told me he would. So I submitted the application, and I knew that I had to hear something by the end of, I think it was like a Thursday weekday. I had to hear something by the end of the workday, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And if I didn't, then that meant they weren't even going to consider me as an applicant. That was at 5. My wife, Julie, calls me from work. She said, she's a nurse also. She said, did you hear anything from Norfolk General? And I said, no, I guess that means that it's over. They're not even going to consider me. 7 o'clock that night, the phone rings. We were living in the shipyard. The phone rings, I pick up, hello? Bill, this is Wickheiser. I was standing at attention on the other end of the phone. He didn't see me.
On the phone, oh yeah. We've all done that before.
He didn't see it, but as soon as I heard the name.
It's programming.
He said, yeah, it is. And he said, we need to interview you. He talked like that. And I said, sir, when do you want to see me? Again, true story. He said, 6:30 tomorrow morning.
That sounds about right.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
PT hours.
Exactly. So, where do you want me to be? What he was doing was the medical director, who was an anesthesiologist, was coming off duty at 7 o'clock that morning, so he was going to catch me for an interview since he had the ultimate.
Yes or no vote, yeah.
Yeah, he and Wickheiser had the ultimate say. Yeah. So anyway, I went in and a guy named Dr. Steiner, another first class guy, another one that gave me a big break, and talked from 6:30 to 7 o'clock, and he said, well, incidentally, while I was at Portsmouth, I was in charge of, in the OR, I was in charge of orthopedic surgery. Well, the head of the orthopedic surgery, the head of the department was the person, one of the people that I worked for. Well, unbeknownst to me, he and the program director were friends, and he wrote me a letter of recommendation. So when the program director, after the 30-minute interview with him from 6:30 to 7 o'clock, at the end of the interview, he said, well, he said, I read Shocker's letter, and as far as I'm concerned, I'll see you in August.
Nice.
Good God Almighty! I could have stood on the ground in front of that 16-story hospital building at Portsmouth and jumped to the roof, and I was so happy.
Finally.
Yeah.
Finally.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
You know, Bill, for a guy that says that he's, was never very good at classical or formal education, you sure spent a lot of time trying to get.
Dan, you don't have to be the smartest guy in the class. It's really good if you can be. You don't have to be the smartest guy in the class. It's a perseverance contest. You get up and do it again. That's what I did. I got knocked on my butt so many times, but I knew what I wanted, and I was going to get it.
So it's a marathon, not a sprint. Right?
It is. Yeah, I mean, we've all heard the expression, you got to play the long game.
Yeah.
That's what you got to do. I came here as a new graduate. I graduated from the nurse anesthesia program at 48 years old. I came here, I was older than the guys I work for here at Cape Fear Valley. The nice thing about that is that when you were in staff meetings, I was older than all of the nurse anesthetists. The nice thing about that is that when you're in staff meetings, you can say what you really want to say.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So,
and I would, every time I would say speak up at a staff meeting, I would preface it by saying, I'm going to talk to you like I'm your father.
I mean, who could argue with that?
Right.
I mean, that would already put most people in a certain mindset.
Yeah.
So
let me get back to real quick to undergraduate degree. And there was one class that I took right away, the beginning of class in the School of Business. Two things that happened that I remember. One of them, the professor said, how many of you were A students in high school? Of course, a number of them like that. How many of you were B students like that? How many of you were C students? I raised my hand. And he said, C students, leave your hands up. He said, the rest of you look around here. You know what I'm about to say. He said, now I can tell you in about 20, 25 years from now, you're going to be working for these guys. And another one, when I handed in my marketing exam, it was a midterm, a final, class discussion, and a class project. Well, I had to see it, of course, like everything else. And I handed in my final. I went back at 26. I was probably about 27 at the time. Handed in my final, and the professor said, Bill, can I tell you something? I said, yes, sir. Pardon my French. He said, you're a damn smart C student. Well, when he told me that, I wore that like a badge of honor the rest of the time I was there. Now, there's no question I could have done better, but going to class all morning and then working till 11 o'clock at night, it was extremely difficult to do. And what I would put down on a midterm or a final was what I remembered in class for the most part. I will say when I did go to a nurse anesthesia program, grades went up significantly.
Well, you'd finally gotten to where you'd been trying for so long
Correct.
to get.
Yeah.
Correct.
Would you say that your military service really helped hone your ability, your tenacity, the thing that ended up making you successful in what you wanted to do?
Oh, no question about it. Let's not tell these young guys that are going in. If you're going to, actually, the recruiter here asked me years ago. When they had a recruiting station over here in Bordeaux, he got apparently he knew somebody who worked in the hospital. Told him, well, you might want to bring this guy in to talk to these new recruits. he was in the Navy, retired Navy. So he contacted me, and I did. I went over, and he had a room full of guys that were getting ready to get on the bus, or that were about to sign. And I remember telling them that if you're just going to hang around here, just by looking at you, you're probably 18, 19 years old. If you're going to hang around here, I can tell you right now, 4 years from now, if you go in for 4 years from now, when you come home on leave during that 4 year period, you know where your friends are going to be? They're going to be right where you left them.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's going to be, you're going to meet a lot of people, and this is true. I think you guys will probably agree with me. I want to talk to you like I'm your daddy. I'm kidding. You're going to meet a lot of people on active duty that you are going to mimic their behavior. You're going to want to be like a lot of good people. You're going to want to be like, and these are going to be NCOs and these are going to be officers. The same thing is true with what I'm about to say. You're going to meet a lot of them you're not going to want to be like. Again, a number of NCOs and a number of officers. That's the way it was for me. It still, at least from my understanding, is it still happens. So I was telling Dan this, that I think the Army calls it green to gold. We call it, the Navy calls it Mustangers.
Yeah, I wanted to ask how you commissioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was direct commissioned after I got the nursing degree.
Okay.
Yeah. I went as an E1 and got out as an E5, and then got my nursing degree, and excuse me, and applied for a commission, and I didn't get in the first time. I was rejected the first time. And excuse me, golly. So the Navy recruiter asked me to go ahead and do it again and just rewrite your letter. I told him that I really wanted to get into a nurse anesthesia program. She said that was the only reason I wanted to come back. She said, don't say that. So the second time I said that I would do whatever was required, you know, as a nurse corps officer. Whether it was serving the stuffed artichokes at the old man's garden party, or pulling the trigger to defend the Republic. And the next time around, when she resubmitted it, sign him up.
Artichokes it is.
That's it.
So, with your experience leading up to Vietnam, getting out afterwards, and you know, the way that you and your fellow veterans were treated coming home.
Oh yeah.
Your experiences in school, going all the way up to, you know, commissioning,
Right.
and then, you know, all the way through. Would you do it all again?
No question. I'd do it in a second. I'd go back on active duty tomorrow morning at 80 years old. About the only thing I could do for you young guys. No, it's true. About the only thing I could do for you young guys is be a blood donor or reload the magazines for you. But you gotta have somebody doing that.
It's true.
And I'm telling you, I told Dan this, I'll always be, I can be a BG or a fleet admiral. I'm always gonna be that grunt E5 right here. You will too. I know you were you enlisted?
I'm sad to say I was an officer.
But
Yes.
that's okay. No, you don't have to say that.
I'll still be that wet behind the ears second lieutenant. Yeah.
He always will be to me anyway.
Yeah, and you know what though? Speaking of that, I remember when I was stationed in Jacksonville, Florida. I was a 02. There was a young 01, a young ensign that was in the same apartment complex that me and my roommate were in. And he was just getting his first assignment to a ship, and he asked me. He said, Bill, what what should I do? I've never, I'm just coming on active duty. And I said, here I am going to the ship, and we're going to be deployed. And I said, that's pretty easy. You go find the NCOIC, and in the Navy we call them LPO, Leading Petty Officer, that runs that department. And you just tell him that you're going to need his help, and whatever he wants you to do and everything he can teach you, that you're certainly receptive to it. In other words, you don't go in there and you just don't go in there and tell them what to do.
Right.
And when I was deployed too, when I was on a surgical team, well, one of several deployments, I was on a surgical team out of Portsmouth, and we were on board a helicopter carrier. First thing I did when we came on board was I found the senior chief that was running the medical department. And I mean, he saw my ribbons. He could tell I was ex-enlisted, and he saw the Vietnam ribbons and the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. He put two and two together and knew that I was a Navy Corpsman with the Marines. And I remember telling him, I said, Senior, you just tell me what you want us to do. We're not about to come in here and tell you how to run your department. You know where every nook and cranny is around this place. And that's what we did. And it ran just fine. So, I'm trying to think what else. There were about, in 2002, I get a phone call, 2001, I get a phone call from one of the guys I was with in Vietnam. And he said, we need to have a reunion. I said, well, how are we going to find everybody? He said, well, my stepdaughter is computer savvy. And let's see if we can't run some of these people down. Anyway, A led to B, led to C. We organized a reunion, and we found about 14 of us that were all together. We really didn't get to know each other till the offensive operations stopped, because we were back in standing the perimeter, the northern perimeter of Da Nang. And we were at a place called FLC, Fleet Logistics Command. And at that time, we were just going out for day sweeps and coming back. We weren't out several weeks at a time. And we had our first reunion, and actually it was supposed to be the week of 9/11, and needless to say, all flights were canceled.
Yeah.
Everything came to a dead stop then. Well, you know that. So we rescheduled it for about 3 months later. We went to Pacific, Missouri. It was pretty much a central part of it. Well,
About as close to the middle as you're going to get?
Correct.
Yeah.
For those of us that were scattered around. Well, one of the things we did, speaking of the survivor's guilt that I was talking about earlier, we sat in a big circle, and everybody, we went around man to man to man to man, and what have you been doing, and what has really bothered you? And I told them, they knew that story, or some of them did, and I told them, and I just, when I left there, with one of the best feelings I had about myself that I had had in 33 years.
Clear conscience.
33, yes. The bottom line is, and I'll tell you young guys this, we've seen it. You guys have been in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the bottom line is, and you just have to accept this, you're always going to live with the things that you saw, and what if. For me, I'm always going to live with the survivor's guilt. However, it's not up here now. It's here. I'll always carry it with me, but I can deal with it a lot, much, much better after talking this over with the rest of them. The bottom line is, it wasn't your turn, period. You're here for a reason, and you just don't know it yet. Why did I survive at 80 years old? and I'm still here. I had open heart surgery 20 years ago. I've been on death row several times. One time when I had my heart done. Another one, right after I went back on active duty, I got steamrolled by a tractor trailer in Jacksonville, Florida. Actually, outside of Jacksonville, Florida. I was going back to the air station where the hospital is.
Mm-hmm.
And I got hit, I got rear-ended by an 18-wheeler. And I walked away. Vietnam, I mean, how many times, some of this, when I look back on some of the stupid things I did, one of them in particular, I remember we were dug in on the perimeter at a artillery base. The ground was so hard, they had to bring a, what do you call it?
Backhoe?
Yes, exactly right. So you've had the same thing.
Yeah.
Earth mover.
You
Yep.
did. I mean, a E-tool, what about it? It'd be like me trying to dig a hole in this table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I remember, I remember sitting on the sandbags that we had at the top edge of it to have a picture taken. I've still got it in my phone. Have a picture taken with my back turned to Indian country. Well, that's what we call,
Yeah.
hostile target.
That hasn't changed.
Yes, that I can definitely 100% guarantee you that has
And
not
I'm sitting there-
changed
I'm
because
sitting
I've done the same thing.
I'm sitting there with my helmet off.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Another time we were sweeping an area, we were walking around a bomb crater. And there was a M79 grenade launcher shell. When we were sweeping the area, we're about 20 feet apart in case of bouncing bed. If somebody steps on the bouncing bed, you're outside the kill radius, or
Yeah.
that's the intent. I reached down without even thinking. That damn thing could have been booby trapped. But I didn't think. I think about it now.
Mm-hmm.
But I just reached down to snatch it and right away into the bomb crater. Of course, I didn't want anybody else picking it up. One of the VC or NBA and
Yeah.
use it on us as some kind of IED. So.
Well, your life is a miracle. I think that's clear.
Divine intervention does exist.
It does indeed.
And perseverance pays off.
You got it. And I'm telling you, it's not just everything in this life's a perseverance contest. This life is a perseverance contest. And every time I want to hear in the last, especially over the last since the Russians invaded Ukraine, I remind myself when I start whining about stupid crap, what really is stupid things, that at least we don't have an artillery shell. They're not walking shells down Torcross Drive.
Right.
Yeah.
So
When we all come home from the war, we all swear to ourselves that we'll never lose that perspective
right.
that you have from being on the front line and that charge that you get and the adrenaline and that sense of perspective that you get from how important life truly is. And over time, I mean, it's just human nature. We tend to lose that.
Yeah.
But it's still there. But
Sometimes you need a reminder.
yes.
I will tell you that Vietnam was, there's no question, it was extremely stressful. I don't have to tell you that. You've been in war some. But there were some things that were pretty funny back then. One in particular I remember, when we went back to when the offensive operation stopped, there was me and another guy from Georgia. We're shared a hooch with actually it was about half size this room. We had 3 cots in it, and it was right off the side of the medical supply hooch. and there was a club in the rear where we were, and he'd go out every night and overindulge, and he'd come in and wake us up, say, "Honey, I'm home." So what we did, he'd sit down in front of a makeshift desk, and he had a fan on the desk, and he would just sit there inebriated. So my sidekick and I, a guy named Mike Smith from Georgia, he's still one of my good friends. We still laugh about this. We took on the fan. We took black. It was a white fan. We took black paint, and in the hub of the fan, we put you know what I'm going to say, and spiraled it out on the blades. So when he came in and hit the button, we were hoping to find him in a catatonic stupor the next day, just staring at the fan to shut him up. Of course, it didn't work.
It didn't
Not
work
for lack of trying.
It didn't work as planned,
Right.
or it just didn't work at all.
It didn't work as planned. Oh,
Leave it to GIs to find something funny to.
These young guys do the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, Bill, this has been great. It's been informative and funny and interesting, and we're definitely glad that you could do this.
Dan, I certainly appreciate you even considering asking me to do this, and I'm extremely grateful to you young ones.
Of course.
I'll volunteer here.
Your service matters.
Well, I'm extremely grateful to you young ones because you really don't have to do it. And in my day, you went to the slammer, or you fled to Canada, or you just did it.
Yeah.
And in spite of all the stress and the times that I thought I was going to die, I'd do it again in a second.
Well, welcome home, sir.
Yeah.
Welcome home.
Thank you, Roger. You know, speaking of that too, we didn't. One of the reunions we had was in D.C. And of course, we went to the Vietnam Wall. And one of the souvenir vendors, when he found out we were all Navy Corpsmen, and he gave us, when you said welcome home, this reminded me of it. He gave us our wooden nickel, shook our hands and told us welcome home, and I still have my wooden nickel at home.
Well, this has been great, Bill, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back sometime, and we can get into some more funny paint stories.
I have, if you want to, I have I'm writing a book. I'm up to about 300 pages, all the things that piss me off. We can talk about that.
Only 300.
Only 300.
Well, I'm up to 300.
Fair enough, and counting.
And I have a lot of unsolicited opinions, if you want.
Fair enough.
Hey. Yeah, we can definitely go over that next time.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
Thank you.
We'd love to have you back, sir.
All right,
Thanks.
so,
Yeah.
Thank you. Very grateful to you.
Okay, Dan, what did you think of the interview?
That was definitely a story of perseverance.
Yeah.
I know that we use that word a lot, but I mean, considering that, I mean, he went through all of that to become an anesthesiologist. He went through all of that to become an anesthesiologist, and it took him over 20 years to do it.
Yeah.
But he did it.
Yeah. I love how he used the skills that he was able to use to survive.
Yeah.
And those very same survival skills he was able to apply later on down the road in a professional matter, but again, to his advantage, all that he got through his time as a corpsman. I love that.
Yeah. Those guys definitely saw some stuff.
Yeah.
Saw some stuff. And he saw it while he was still in the States.
Yeah.
For 18 months there at Portsmouth. He saw all the wounded and the casualties coming back.
The carnage.
Yes.
Yeah.
For 3 times longer than, because he said that most people were there for, like 6 months.
6 months, yeah.
And he was there for 18. And knowing, I think in a way that probably helped him because he was already, visually exposed to it. So it wasn't as traumatic as seeing it for the first time directly on the battlefield.
If we can call that a silver lining.
Yes. I mean, there's a silver lining everywhere, right? But, he talked about it. So some guys were there for a few months, deployed to Vietnam, and then they were right back there in that same hospital weeks later.
Yeah.
And wow.
I like how we touched on survivor guilt.
Yeah.
I think it's very important to talk about these things.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see that there are some gentlemen from his generation that are willing to talk about this.
Yeah.
Albeit it may have taken him decades to get to that point, which he did say as late as 2002.
Yeah.
When they had their reunion, he was able to kind of lay some of that to rest, or at least have it mitigated to a level where it was manageable, is how he said it.
Yeah.
I've talked about this a lot with my family, and you and I've discussed it as well, how I think that the emotional and the mental scars from our generation's conflicts, particularly Iraq and Afghanistan, although they're not the only ones, I think a lot of those, moral injury and a lot of the scars, we've only even really begun to scratch the surface on that. And so I think it's helpful for us to see in the older generation that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There is healing. Excuse me. There is healing. You just got to hang on, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that's really hard for us to gauge is because our conflicts, Iraq and Afghanistan, were 2-decade-long conflicts. And we did, multiple tours. And it's just, like he said, driving, one day to the next, one tour and burying those events, those memories and everything, burying them deep, it can take a long time to kind of overcome those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I think that it's going to be that way for us as well, or our generation of veterans, but perhaps even more in a more prolonged sense.
Yeah. Because
our conflict was so long, and so many veterans like us did multiple tours across 20 years. I hope that it doesn't.
Yeah.
Definitely in our case, it's become more socially acceptable for us to talk about, the things that we went through and everything. And I think that's
culturally, not just the military, but
culturally.
Yeah.
Culturally, certainly.
Yeah.
And I think that that's helpful. And I hope that it doesn't take people from our generation of veterans 30 years to finally be able to get these sort of things off their chest.
Yeah.
So
well said.
Yeah. Oof. But free fire time.
Oh no.
You ready?
Oh no.
I've got a doozy for you.
Okay.
Is Die Hard 2 the worst sequel ever made?
So by sequel, you mean number 2?
Yes. The second movie in a franchise.
Okay. So the first sequel.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
Is Die Hard 2 the worst?
The worst follow-up.
Man, this is really separating the men from the boys. I thought you were going to ask me if this was a Christmas movie, which
No, Die Hard is, of course, a Christmas movie.
Clearly it is.
Die Hard 2, I don't think there's that debate, again, because is it the worst sequel ever?
No, I believe, Dan, that dubious honor goes to the Mighty Ducks 2. I know. There's some Emilio Estevez fans out there who are quack, who are we're gonna get letters. We're gonna get letters.
Nobody writes letters anymore.
Well, of course, you knew that the counterattack was coming, so indeed I ask you, is indeed Die Hard 2 the worst first sequel of any movie franchise?
You know, as a huge fan of the entire series of movies, yes. Yes, it is, especially in an action franchise.
Okay.
Especially in an action franchise, but I think in any franchise, period. I cannot think off the top of my head, or even probably with any serious thought, of any sequel that is worse. As a worse follow-up. Not necessarily that the film is just that awful, but as a worse follow-up to a, just a monster first film.
It was a tough act to follow.
It's true.
And it sounds to me like their attempt leaves you wanting.
Okay. Yes. Okay, we'll leave it there.
Die Hard 2, ladies and gentlemen.
Die Hard 2, worst sequel of an action franchise ever.
Okay, well, this is going to wrap up the episode, so we invite you to like, share, subscribe this episode on YouTube and Rumble with any of your friends. Please get 2 friends to join in. You're our marketing team. We'd invite you to look at our website and our social medias. We're on all of the socials. And then reach out to us if you have any better Free Fire area topics for future episodes.
Right. Well, thanks for watching. Again, we are right now just on YouTube and Rumble, but we will in the future be on all the various audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and what have you. And remember, your service matters. Thanks again.